وَلَقَدْ كَرَّمْنَا بَنِي آدَمَ وَحَمَلْنَاهُمْ فِي الْبَرِّ وَالْبَحْرِ ورزقناهم من الطيبات وفضلناهم على كثير ممن خلقنا تفضيلا.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. Assalamu alaikum and welcome to this 5th episode in this podcast series titled Becoming Bani Adam, exploring 12 Shi'i discussions on human ancestry. My name is Fatima Megji and I'll be introducing each podcast episode, which is an audiobook of a paper that I wrote a few years ago. This audiobook is narrated by Brother Justin Mashouf, and in every episode I give a short introduction. In the previous episode, we went through a brief introduction to 12 Shi'i scholars and their historical openness to the idea of human evolution, and we also distinguished between empirical data and explanations as we try to now grapple with empirical data along with scriptural observations or comments that are made about this topic. Today's episode will discuss the alleged timeline of Prophet Adam alayhi salam and the various pieces of evidence that we'll use to try to come to a conclusion. This will include evidence from the fossil record, the Qur'an, and the hadith. There are two plausible timelines for where to place Adam alayhi salam in history. The first option is that he existed more than 200,000 years ago, and as such was the first of the Homo sapiens species. If this were the case, then that means that all fossils of Homo sapiens that are found after this point in time are descendants of Adam alayhi salam. The second possibility, and arguably more likely one, is that he existed between 10 to 12,000 years ago. While exploring lines of evidence for human evolution, including the fossil record, we will explore ways in which we can explain the fossil record in line with this timeline, and will also include scriptural and anthropological evidence that may help us in navigating these two possibilities to try to come to a possibility of what the implications would be for either timeline. With that, let's turn over to Brother Justin Mashouf as he continues reading from the audiobook. Thank you.
The first question that arises with regards to Adam concerns his temporal history. When exactly did he live on Earth? There is an extensive fossil record with various hominid species, which indicate that the Homo sapiens species was roaming the Earth long before the alleged timeline for Adam. This timeline has been estimated at 10,000 years ago, consistently by Islamic, Jewish, and Christian traditions. The fossil record shows the existence of other hominid human-like species as well, and evolutionary biologists contend that these Homo species have evolved into the anatomically modern Homo sapiens. The existence of these previous Homo sapiens is evidenced with thousands of fossils in the fossil record. Their existence is not problematic or contradictory to any Qur'anic information. However, the existence of the Homo sapiens species more than 200,000 years before the alleged timeline of Adam brings many questions to the forefront. Human beings today are classified as Homo sapiens. As such, are we related to the Homo sapiens that have been found in the fossil record about 200,000 years ago? Was Adam the first Homo sapien? To unscramble this discussion and the questions that arise, we will begin by looking at what the fossil record and empirical evidence says about the Homo sapiens and their existence on Earth. The fossil record. The fossil record contains samples from thousands of human-like beings, i.e. hominids, from more than 1 million years ago. Fossils are the naturally preserved remains of organisms and are of two types, body and trace. The definitions reflect the names. Body fossils are the physical remains of what was once living, and trace fossils consist of the second-hand evidence that they left behind, such as footprints. Fossils are dated using various scientific methods, like radiometric dating, which measures rates of radioactive decay in what is known as absolute dating. These dating methods are accurate to within a few thousand years with a small margin of error. The fossil record shows many primate, human-like species from as early as 4 million years ago, where they were bipedal, i.e. capable of walking on 2 feet. Eventually, these fossils begin to look more and more like the Homo sapiens, the anatomically modern human. The oldest fossil of a Homo sapien is Homo 1, found in Kabish, Ethiopia, and has been dated to approximately 195,000 years. This seems to conflict with the idea that Adam lived only 10,000 years ago, and that the rest of mankind spread from his descendants. More problematic is that the remains of Homo sapiens have been found globally and across all continents. If mankind spread from Adam 10,000 years ago, then how is this possible? The world is colored with the remains of Homo sapiens long before this time period. Even in North America, the oldest remains of a male infant child, dubbed Anzique I, were recovered from a burial site in western Montana, and the bones have been dated as 10 to 12,000 years old. The existence of these Homo sapien fossils across the globe begs the question, are Homo sapiens all the sons and daughters of Adam, or something else? When did Adam live? B. Qur'anic discussions and conflicts with timelines. With regards to Adam's timeline, the Qur'an is silent. In fact, the Qur'an does not mention any dates altogether, and only rarely mentions timeframes. However, it does make some references to numbers of years, like how long Nuh preached to his people, and how long the companions of the cave slept. The lack of a precise timeline means that one could make the argument that Adam was the first Homo sapien, about 200,000 years ago. Because of the existence of Homo sapiens in the fossil record dated to this time, delineating Adam as the first of the Homo sapiens would oblige us to place his existence on a timeline starting at least about 200,000 years ago. With this line of thinking, he could be the father of all Homo sapien fossils found thereafter. This explanation could be an alternative explanation and would not be problematic per se if we were only taking the Qur'an into consideration. Taking the ahadith literature into consideration and understanding them literally in a haqiqi dhahiri manner, this time frame becomes unlikely and problematic. First, it would be problematic from an anthropological point of view due to the behaviors mentioned in stories narrated on Adam's family. The Qur'an mentions some of these stories in detail, and they raise important questions. Particularly relevant is the story of Adam's two sons, Habil, Abel, and Qabil, Cain, in their iconic brotherly struggle that results in the first murder. In Surah Al-Ma'idah, verse 31, the Qur'an states, "Relate to them truly the account of Adam's two sons. When the two of them offered an offering, it was accepted from one of them and not accepted from the other. One of them said, 'Surely I will kill you.' The other one said, 'Allah accepts only from the God-wary. Even if you extend your hand toward me to kill me, I will not extend my hand toward you to kill you. Indeed, I fear Allah, the Lord of all the worlds. I desire that you earn the burden of my sin and your sin to become one of the inmates of the fire, and such is the requital of the wrongdoers.' So his soul prompted him to kill his brother, and he killed him, and thus became one of the losers. Then Allah sent a crow, exploring in the ground to show him how to bury the corpse of his brother. He said, 'Woe to me! Am I unable to be even like this crow and bury my brother's corpse?' Thus he became regretful." End quote. Ayatollah Jawadi Amoli, in volume 14 of his tafsir, Surat va Sirat Insan dar Qur'an, The Face and the Character of Humans in the Qur'an, brings forward an interesting observation using behavior anthropology with regards to this story. Firstly, Ayatollah Jawadi Amoli implies that Adam could not have existed before other Homo sapiens at a timeline of 200,000 years ago. I speculate that this is due to other ahadith and tensions that arise. The next possibility would be that whether Adam descended from these other Homo sapiens. He contends that had Adam's family been the offspring of previous Homo sapiens, Qabil would have known what to do with the body of his brother. The fossil record shows intentional burial by Homo sapiens as early as 100,000 years ago, where 15 individuals dated to this time were found in a cave alongside pieces of red ochre, noting a funeral ritual. The verse at hand, however, notes Qabil's confusion at what to do with his brother's body. As such, God sends crows to show him how to bury Habil. One might argue that this supports the idea that Adam and his family were the first of the Homo sapiens. They were taught how to bury fellow man, and it continued thereafter. Regrettably, this argument is weak, because it means that burial disappears from the fossil record for at least 100,000 years. This seems odd. If Adam and his children were the first Homo sapiens and had learned to bury their dead, one would expect this knowledge of burial to continue with their descendants. In conclusion, Ayatollah Jawadi Amoli contends that this means that Adam and his family were from a unique progeny unrelated to other Homo sapiens that were roaming the earth. Had they been related or of their descent, Qabil would have known what to do by observing his forefathers. As such, he argues that there are probably at least two ancestral lines of Homo sapiens, the line of Adam and the line of these other Homo sapiens, which show up in the fossil record. There are other similar behavioral contentions when it comes to the ahadith literature and biblical tradition. One of these is that Habil is narrated to have been a shepherd. When God commands him and his brother to give an offering, Habil chooses the finest ram from his flock and offers it. On the other hand, Qabil is narrated to have been a farmer who collected a mere handful of the hardest grains of wheat, grains that could not be ground in his stone mill, grains that even his animals could not eat. In other behaviors noted, the ahadith literature suggests that God taught Adam how to plant and farm and even sent him saplings. If we take these traditions literally, it means that Adam's two sons knew how to domesticate animals and plants, and as such, it should have been a skill that was passed on to future generations and shown up in the fossil record. However, agriculture doesn't show up in the fossil record until about 10,000 years ago, where it makes an appearance in various parts of the world. It does not seem probable or likely to suggest that Adam and his family were the first of the Homo sapiens to exist 200,000 years ago, and that they knew how to farm, but that their offspring either forgot or didn't do so for the next 190,000 years. Evidence for agriculture begins roughly 12,000 years ago, where evidence for it has been found in the Zagros Mountains in Iran. Moreover, domesticated agriculture and community settlements appear together in the fossil record, marking what is known as the Neolithic Revolution by some evolutionists. It is credited as a turning point in the history of mankind, where agricultural development is alleged to be a crucial element in the unexplained incredible development of the Homo sapiens species thereafter. C. A plausible timeline. While there could be alternative explanations to solve the issues noted above, it does not make sense to push for a timeline that goes against both ahadith literature and the fossil record from what we've discovered so far. We can therefore make either one of the three conclusions to make sense of the Quranic verses. 1. Adam existed more recently than 200,000 years ago and is not the first of the Homo sapiens species. 2. There is another reason the behavior is absent from the fossil record and the fossil record is incomplete. Or 3. We need to discard the literal interpretations of the majority of traditions about their behavior and interpret these stories as symbolic. As discussed in Part 1, the latter option is not one that can be done haphazardly. We would need to ascertain the literal impossibility of the story or have some type of qara'in, indicators, that suggest these stories were intended symbolically. While Adam's timeline is difficult to ascertain from the Quran alone, there is much to be discussed in the ahadith corpus, which is rich in information and detail with regards to how many thousands of years ago Adam lived. The ahadith corpus and biblical tradition do form qara'in, indicators, that should be taken seriously. This is the other major reason why placing Adam at around 200,000 years ago is problematic. In his article, The Creation of Mankind in Islamic Thought and Its Relation with the Theory of Evolution, Ali Afzali traces several sources in the 12 Shii tradition that suggest that Adam did not exist earlier than 10 to 12,000 years ago. He also notes sources that includes both Jewish and Christian texts, which suggest Adam existed 8,000 years ago, and 12 Shia hadith sources and history books that state a similar timeline. He primarily refers to Allama Majlisi's Bihar al-Anwar, a compendium of 12 Shia traditions. In summary, both ahadith and behavioral anthropology seem to date Adam's existence at approximately 10 to 12,000 years ago, at the beginning of the Neolithic Revolution. This time period is when mankind flourished, according to evolutionary biologists. It is a period marked with the appearance of agriculture, human settlements, and a mysterious leap in technology, alluding to the advancement of the human intellect. This would agree with the Islamic tradition of God creating Adam with an intellect and would explain why the Homo sapien changed their behavioral pattern. Dating Adam before 10,000 years ago would almost certainly necessitate a rejection of a literal haqiqi reading of the hadith corpus and the stories relating to his family. So far, this doesn't seem necessary. However, if Adam existed just 10 to 12,000 years ago, then the question arises, what were the other anatomically modern Homo sapiens that were roaming the earth before? Are we the descendants of those other Homo sapiens or related to them in any way? 2.